All right, tonight we're making chicken and rice. Pretty straightforward. Cup of rice into the rice cooker. Then 2 cups of liquid. I like to use chicken broth that makes it taste savory. You can also just use 2 cups of water. That in there. Turn it on. Stir. Put you over there for now. Cover it up, and that'll take like 20 minutes to cook. And then we are going to cut up the chicken. And while we do that, we are going to discuss Fire Emblem Engage for the Nintendo Switch. It was the second Fire Emblem game on the Switch, the third if you go by internal ID number. Fire Emblem 18 never coming out, I guess. So Fire Emblem Engage. It is an amazing game. It is probably the best Fire Emblem game ever made. The story is completely nonsensical. At one point in the game, Marth, who's actually a character in the game, this time, that's just like referenced, he looks directly at the camera and says, "You are the Fire Emblem." He says the line, the titular phrase. But again, completely nonsensical, doesn't matter. None of this can hold a torch staff to anything from a Kaga emblem with child hunts and all that nonsense. But nobody plays Fire Emblems for the story. They play for the gameplay, and this has the best gameplay of all of the Fire Emblems. So the biggest thing this game did was that it kind of corrects a lot of the design flaws that older Fire Emblems have, right? In that, there's always like the discussion of like player phase Fire Emblems versus enemy phase Fire Emblems. But if you think about it, in a player phase Fire Emblem, it's, okay, I'm using a warp staff to warp my one superpowered character to the end to just finish the level. In an enemy phased one, it's, okay, I'm putting my superpower character into like a bottleneck and then hitting end turn, and I'm waiting for the enemies just to come and like break themselves on him while he's just sitting there taking them out during the enemy phase. And this game gets around that in a couple, basically 2 very key ways. One, the bosses all have multiple health bars. So it doesn't matter if you have one super strong character that can one-shot a boss. Great, they one-shot the boss, one of the health bars breaks, combat ends, the boss is still standing there. You now need to hit them with a second attack to break the second health bar, a third attack to break the third health bar. Say, okay, well then why wouldn't you just, get your one strong character there and just do it over the course of a couple turns? And that does not work because when you first engage a boss, it, 1, usually causes additional reinforcements to spawn, but 2, all remaining enemies on the map will aggro to the boss, which means your one guy will quickly get overwhelmed if you just send one guy there. So you need to, actually have a full balanced party of characters, and you need to move them to the boss. There's also like anti-turtling mechanics in that if you wait too long, there will just be infinitely spawning reinforcements, but they all have like a skill which makes it so they give no experience, so you can't really grind on them. There is technically a way you can grind skill points on them, but like there's very few maps where it's viable to even do that. And again, if you're gonna grind, why wouldn't you just go play on like non-maddening mode where you can just grind infinitely on like skirmishes? Yeah, I played on Maddening Classic, obviously. Mom didn't raise a casual. Yeah, so yeah, this is here. Do you want to know how passionate I am about this game? I actually wrote down notes this time about what I wanted to talk about. It's a great game. Right. So they did nerf move overall. So there's not as big of a gap between like mounted units and non-mounted units. I think pretty sure 4 is like the base move for most non-promoted units. 5 is the average for most promoted units. So and I think mounted units only get like 7. I haven't played this game in like a year, but I just remember that it's like, oh yeah, move was a lot more normalized, and because of that too, canter is a skill everyone can get, which then makes it all the more important that everyone gets it because move is few and far between. But that also means that you can do, really outrageous and positiony stuff. Like you can have like your one unit attack here, after the battle move to here. Another one moves here, moves to here, moves here, and then you can like position into like a plus shape, because one of the things they introduced in this game are these like super attacks you can basically do. Which, a lot of them are just like, okay, it's a really strong attack, but some of them, like the ability to do like a super dance that refreshes 4 characters in like orthogonal directions, suddenly canter plus that means you can have 4 people attack, position themselves in a plus, have your person move into the middle, super, all 4 of them refresh, bam, you get 4 more attacks. And then that's the kind of like cheesy stuff you actually have to do if you want to take out a boss in one turn. But yeah, the supers are kind of cool too. Like, they can. You can't really rely on them as a crutch, because they do have to like build up over time by like just like doing other skills. But yeah. Game has DLC too. I actually didn't like what they did with the DLC compared to some of the other Fire Emblem DLCs. Because if you look at like Awakening DLC, Three Houses DLC, Fates DLC, it's usually the like DLC chapters fall into 2 categories. They're either you can play them with just your straight super overpowered party from your other game, and that's fine, right? That's a chance to stretch your legs, do broken stuff. Or they're tightly balanced. They give you an exact set of characters. You must use those characters, and because of that, they can like have a really tightly balanced challenge, right? You can't just break them with, oh yeah, here's my character with all the skills maxed out. They can just like, stroll and troll through it. With this one, it's the character's levels and classes are set, but you can still transfer over skills from the non-DLC game. So like, if you built your character differently than how the DLC wanted them to be built, they're just kind of not as good. Or if you were, using the character differently. Like, oh, this was a character that they expected you to be a sword person, but you had turned them into like an axe user when your class changed. Yeah. I mean, also in the DLC, like if your characters die, even on classic mode, they still don't die. So you kind of do just end up like sacking some of them to beat it. Yes, I know. Well, if you're doing a challenge mode, you could just not do that. Well, the DLC was exceptionally hard still. Probably because I didn't build the classes correctly. Like, I've seen videos on YouTube of people like, oh yeah, beat the final chapter of the DLC first turn before the enemy even has a chance to move. It's like, well, great. I didn't use half those characters in my playthrough, so I don't have any of those skills set up. Yeah. Game has top tier waifus, like Ivy and other characters. She has very big stats. Music was okay. Yeah. Oh yeah. So the game does have rewind, and I've got a bit of a hot take with rewind. I think rewind is actually good for the Fire Emblem games because it lets them balance levels around an overall higher and harder difficulty. Right? If an hour into a chapter or 40 minutes into a chapter, there's like respawns you could not possibly know about without looking it up ahead of time, or reinforcements, and you just died at something like that, like that's just frustrating, right? And again, you can just not use it if you don't like it, but it's there for exactly that sort of thing. It lets them have the game be overall harder, because a lot of the older Fire Emblems, again, you can just kind of break them. By the end of the game is easier than the start, right? Especially games like, you think like Fire Emblem 5 is, traditionally thought of as being like one of the hardest ones, but like the end of the game's easier than the beginning. Because by the end of the game, you just have such a strong party, assuming you've, built them correctly. And also, too, the game is balanced around the idea that, oh, what if you didn't get good stat growths? What if you didn't build a good party? It has to be balanced around that because you might get unlucky. But because of that, if you do, the game correctly, it'll be too easy. That said, I do have one counterpoint to this, and I'm kind of defeating my own argument. In the Crom DLC chapter, I ended up using up all of my rewinds, because that's a hard one. And it basically, it's the first half of the chapter, you've just like this area at the bottom, there's a bunch of like strong units, you break the shield. Once the shield breaks, a bunch of reinforcements come from above, the boss aggroes, and just that's what all heck breaks loose. It's crazy stupid. There's hard stuff everywhere that's just gonna like one shot all your guys. And I ended up getting into a situation where I was down to 0 rewinds. Like the next death is a real death, and I need to restart this chapter, and I lose 90 minutes. How's Guy gonna get out of this one? And suddenly tensions were at maximum, and it did come down to one turn where I'm basically like, well, I need to go all in, and I need to have all of my characters attack the boss this turn, and I need to hope that these 65% accurate moves hit, because the next enemy phase, someone dies. And I successfully did get through that chapter. So, yeah, I guess no rewind can add some tension and fun, but an entire game like that, no. I think the rare occasional here and there. Yeah. Fire Emblem Engage. You are the Fire Emblem. So anyways, rice has a while. This is just gonna soak. Saucepan's all greased up. Cook the chicken once that dings, and we'll check back in for the finished product. Alright, and we're back to cook the chicken. Should only take about 3 minutes on high. While that cooks, we're going to take the rice out of the rice cooker, get it into a bowl, and get ready to mix everything at the very end. And we'll just pause this for now. It's very hot. Alright, chicken is going to be done in about 30 seconds. Alright. Then we just stir it up, and yeah, chicken and rice. You know, there's like a cooking thing in Fire Emblem. You can like just make meals in between chapters, and then your characters can like get extra happiness or extra affinity with each other or whatever. I don't know. All the Seminole, is that the name of the place? I don't know. It's the part you just kind of have to skip through to get to the real gameplay, the actual, you know, strategy chapters. That looks pretty good. Way too hot to eat, though. I'm not going to burn myself on it. Well, maybe just a little burn. Oh, big burn. That's delicious, though. Oh, my God. All right, we're done here.